Welcome aboard. We are commencing our scenic and historical journey along Virginia Route 709, also known as Belvoir Road, in the beautiful heart of Fauquier County. We start right at its intersection with the busy US 50, the John Mosby Highway. As we leave US 50, feel the immediate, profound shift in the landscape. The speed and noise of the modern world instantly recede, and we enter a territory marked by quiet fields and old fences. The very name of the highway we left, the John Mosby Highway, sets the stage for the history we are about to explore. This entire region was the operational ground for the legendary Confederate partisan ranger, Colonel John S. Mosby, the Gray Ghost, during the Civil War. Mosby's men, the Rangers, were masters of this land. They used these very secondary roads, the lanes and paths, to launch their daring, rapid raids on the larger, slower Union forces. They knew every wooded covert, every stream crossing, and every local who would provide them with intelligence. The landscape immediately establishes the region's character. Massive parcels of land, often bordered by historic stone walls and pristine split-rail fences. The stone walls are ancient markers, built by early settlers who cleared the fields for crops, leaving behind a lasting architectural signature of early Virginia agriculture. Fauquier County was established in 1759 and quickly became known for its landed gentry. The area we drive through was initially settled for large-scale farming, tobacco, wheat, and grain by prominent colonial families. The houses you see set back from the road often have their origins in these early land grants. As we continue, the landscape evolved dramatically after the Civil War. The late 19th and early 20th centuries brought a new type of investor, wealthy industrialists from Washington, D.C. They sought rural retreats and, critically, places to pursue equestrian sports. This is the birth of Virginia hunt country. This road slices right through territory that is synonymous with horse culture. Look for the grand stables, the well-maintained paddocks, and the perfectly manicured cross-country jumps. The open, preserved nature of these fields is a direct result of generations of owners dedicated to maintaining the land specifically for fox hunting and thoroughbred breeding. We are driving directly through the journey through hallowed ground National Scenic Byway. Every mile of this road was part of the Civil War battlefield. This was not a site of massive single battles, but of constant, intense skirmishing. Route 709 would have been used by both sides. Union cavalry constantly patrolled these roads, attempting to find and suppress Mosby's Rangers. They referred to this area as Mosby's Confederacy because Confederate control was so difficult to break. Imagine the historical tension. A routine patrol could suddenly erupt into a fierce fight right here, often around the houses and farms whose owners were secretly sheltering or supplying the Confederate partisans. The dense woods and rolling terrain offered perfect cover for rapid attacks and quick retreats. Look at the specific architecture we pass. The large, elegant brick and stone houses often follow the Federal or the Georgian styles, reflecting both colonial origins and the Victorian-era refurbishments made by the new hunt country residents. In contrast, notice the older, smaller outbuildings, the spring houses, the smokehouses, and the simple quarters. These structures are the true survivors of the war, telling the essential story of the daily labor and the resilience required to sustain life in this harsh historical environment. We see that traditional agriculture persists alongside the equestrian estates. We see hay fields, cattle grazing, and possibly the occasional vineyard, a growing part of the local economy, taking advantage of the rich Piedmont soil. The small, local roads that intersect this route are often named after the founding families, those who received original land patents. The road names themselves are a living historical record, connecting the current landscape directly to its 18th century settlers. This section of Fauquier County, through which Route 709 runs, was known as the cattle crossing area. The Union Army constantly struggled to forage and supply their massive forces, which meant they drove huge herds of livestock through this region, moving them north toward their camps. This movement made roads like ours constant targets. Mosby's goal was not to win grand battles, but to disrupt supply and logistics. His raids here were often aimed at capturing Union supply wagons, seizing horses, and driving off those massive cattle herds. These actions were crippling to the Union effort and caused huge logistical headaches for commanders in Washington. The local terrain we are passing, the deep ravines, the thickets, and the dense tree lines, was Mosby's greatest ally. He and his men knew exactly where to hide, where to ambush, and how to use the small, sharp hills for cover. They could hit a Union supply line on this road and disappear into the surrounding woods before reinforcements could arrive. Look for the subtle, narrow tracks or farm lanes that branch off. These are the modern versions of the ancient bridle paths and cow paths that Mosby's men used for their famous suddenness and swiftness. The long-term impact of the war on this land was immense. The army stripped the land of resources. Fences were burned for firewood, crops were destroyed, and livestock was seized. The recovery was long and difficult for the families who stayed. The peace we see today is a hard-won peace, built on the foundations of a land that was once considered a vital, contested ground, a true borderland where Confederate and Union influence constantly shifted. The serenity of these estates hides the intense military activity that defined this space 160 years ago. This drive is a quiet history lesson, written in the stone walls and the stillness of the fields. We are traveling across the Piedmont Plateau of Virginia. This region is characterized by gently rolling hills and a distinct type of reddish-brown clay soil. This soil, rich in iron, is why the area is so well suited for grazing horses and cattle. The land is inherently fertile, which is what drew the original colonial settlers here for agriculture. The geology also dictates the architecture. The stone used in those beautiful old fences and the foundations of the earlier houses is primarily local schist and gneiss, metamorphic rocks prevalent in the Piedmont. These stones are easily split into thin layers, making them excellent, if labor-intensive, building materials. The presence of these stone walls is a direct physical link between the geology of the land and the history of its settlement. The rivers and streams that cross Route 709 are typically shallow and fast-moving, unlike the deep, slow rivers closer to the coast. This meant that during the Civil War, many smaller streams were easily fordable. They didn't require bridges, allowing Mosby's light cavalry to move with greater speed and flexibility than the Union's heavy wagon trains. The terrain itself was part of the military strategy. The maintenance of the landscape is a modern, collective effort. The vast estates and the local preservation trusts work actively to prevent the fragmentation of the land into smaller developments. The establishment of hunt country in this part of Fauquier County was a deliberate cultural act. It wasn't just about farming. It was about recreating a specific aristocratic lifestyle inspired by English landed gentry. When wealthy families began purchasing these large tracts of land in the early 20th century, they brought with them a distinct set of social rules and traditions centered entirely around the horse. They established the local hunt clubs and created a social calendar dictated by the riding season. This meant that the maintenance of Route 709 and the adjacent land became a matter of social prestige. The beauty of the landscape was, and is, a social requirement. The estates you see set back from the road often contain elaborate kennels for the foxhounds and extensive riders' lodges and guest houses. The very purpose of these large homes was to host visiting members of the hunt during the season. This fostered a close-knit, exclusive community dedicated to preserving the rural character of the land against development. This contrasts sharply with the history of the small, working farms. While the estate owners pursued sport, the long-established local farmers provided the labor, the feed, and the necessary services to keep the entire hunt country machine running. This created a distinct social and economic hierarchy that has subtly shaped the history of this road. So, as we drive along Belvoir Road, we are traveling through a landscape that is both genuinely rural and intensely cultivated for a specific, high-status social tradition. It is a very deliberate and beautiful environment. In the colonial and early American period, Fauquier County was a stronghold of the Virginia planter elite. Political power was concentrated in the hands of the largest landowners. Decisions regarding taxes, local infrastructure like roads, and, critically, land ownership were governed by these families. This system established the foundation for the large estates we see today. The political structure was essentially designed to support the agrarian economy and the power of the landed class. The role of the county seat. The county seat, Warrenton, which is accessible via US 17, has historically been the nerve center for all political decisions impacting Route 709. Zoning decisions, which are fiercely contested here, are made in Warrenton. The strong political desire of the landowners in this area has been to maintain low-density zoning, effectively preventing the kind of commercial and suburban sprawl seen closer to Washington, D.C. This political effort is the primary reason this scenic corridor remains so open and undeveloped. Preservation politics and zoning battles. The most significant political dynamic in this area today is the constant tension between preservation and development. The preservation movement, often spearheaded by wealthy landowners and conservation groups like the Piedmont Environmental Council, holds significant political sway. Their goal is to protect the historic, scenic, and agricultural nature of the land. This translates into constant political pressure on the local government to resist proposals from major highways, large housing developments, or commercial centers that would alter the rural character of roads like Route 709. The designation of this area as part of the journey through hallowed ground National Scenic Byway is itself a major political victory for the preservationists, providing a legal layer of protection against damaging development. In essence, the beautiful, quiet landscape we're driving through is not accidental. It is the direct, visible result of successful and ongoing political action by groups determined to maintain the historical and scenic integrity of Virginia Hunt Country.